Hello brothers and welcome to Sigma Old Man channel. The rarest men aren't discovered, they're misunderstood into silence. Let that sink in for a second. Because when you hear Sigma male, most people either roll their eyes or imagine some moody lone wolf who skipped therapy and calls it mystery. But here's the twist. Sigma males aren't just quiet guys who avoid brunch invitations. They're psychological anomalies who don't follow the script because they never agreed to be in the play. And no, they're not born sipping black coffee with a 1,000-yard stare, nor are they trained in the art of vanishing like some brooding Batman in training. The truth is far more unsettling and far more fascinating. Here's a fact. Less than 1% of men fit the Sigma archetype authentically, and most of them don't even know they are one. Why? Because society isn't built to recognize men who opt out of its games without asking for a trophy. They don't want a podium. They want peace, autonomy, and a clean psychological exit from the herd. So, are Sigma males born or made? You're about to find out, but not in the way you've been told. And by the time we're done, you might just realize. The real Sigma never became anything. He just quietly refused to become what everyone else did. Let's break this open, piece by piece. Number one, they're not emotionless. They just prioritize logic when it hurts most. Most people think Sigma males are emotionally cold, detached, or just don't feel things the way others do. But that's not true. They feel everything, sometimes more intensely than most people around them. The difference is they don't wear it on their sleeves. They don't advertise their emotions, and they sure as hell don't let their feelings run the show. When things get chaotic or painful, Sigma males don't react with tears, drama, or noise. They shut down the emotional channel and flip the logic switch, not because they're heartless, but because it's how they survive without falling apart. They've trained themselves, often unconsciously, to protect their inner world by locking it up when the storm hits. They've learned that breaking down in front of people who won't understand is more dangerous than staying quiet. So when most people are overwhelmed, venting or melting down, the Sigma male is processing silently, calculating what needs to be done, what must be endured, and what needs to be cut off. That kind of emotional discipline doesn't come from a book. It comes from being disappointed too many times, from trusting the wrong people, and from realizing that showing vulnerability in the wrong environment gets you nothing but leverage used against you later. But don't mistake the silence for apathy. Inside, it's not a desert, it's a war zone. Sigma males might seem calm on the outside, but on the inside, they're analyzing every feeling, questioning its usefulness, and filtering what's safe to express and what isn't. They're not bottling things up in a toxic way. They're choosing when and how to feel on their own terms. It's emotional control, not emotional absence. And here's the kicker. That's what freaks people out. Most folks are used to people reacting emotionally, needing validation or losing their composure. But a Sigma's emotional stillness under pressure feels alien to others. It's unsettling because it's not performative. There's no cry for help, no meltdown, just silence, decisions, and movement. They're not heartless, they just don't hand their emotions to people who haven't earned the right to hold them. And in a world where oversharing is seen as connection, a man who feels deeply and still chooses silence, that's power most people will never understand. Number two, they are rare because their mindset can't be mass market sold. You can't bottle a Sigma male's mindset, slap a brand on it and sell it in a shiny self-help course. That's the problem, and the brilliance. His psychology doesn't fit into trendy TED Talks, dopamine-fueled morning routines, or manifest your alpha energy guides. His thinking is too raw, too independent, too off-script for the mainstream. This is the kind of man who unlearns before he learns, who questions the teacher before he even opens the book. So when people try to replicate the Sigma persona like it's some downloadable identity, it always comes out fake. Because Sigma is never a performance. It's not curated. It's lived. You can't mass sell something that was born out of emotional exile, deep self-interrogation, and brutal life experience. Sigma males didn't become who they are by following anyone's formula. They became that way by walking away from every formula that didn't fit. That's why the mindset is so rare. It's not profitable, it's not popular, and it sure as hell isn't comfortable. It doesn't crave attention, it doesn't pander. It's the mental version of going off-grid while the rest of the world chases digital enlightenment in a ring light. And here's the twist most people miss. Even if you could explain the Sigma blueprint, he wouldn't bother. He doesn't care if people get him or not. He has no interest in building a tribe, going viral, or proving anything. His entire existence is an act of quiet rebellion against the trends, the noise, the forced connections. That's what makes him rare, not just what he thinks, but the fact that he's completely uninterested in selling it to anyone else. In a world obsessed with mass production of identities, the Sigma male is the glitch in the system. Unbranded, unteachable, unreplicable, and he likes it that way. Number 3, they were built in the shadows, and that's where they thrive. Sigma males weren't handed confidence, handed status, or handed applause. They were forged in silence, when no one was watching, when no one cared, and when no one clapped. While others learned how to impress the crowd, they were learning how to survive it. Their growth didn't happen on stages or in celebrations. It happened in quiet rooms, during long nights of mental warfare, when they were questioning their own value in a world that couldn't see it. That's why they don't crave the spotlight. They never needed it to become powerful in the first place. They built themselves in the shadows, brick by painful brick, often through betrayal, rejection, and isolation. But they didn't turn bitter, they turned surgical. They started watching, studying, adapting, not to fit in, but to never be caught off guard again. Every hard moment was a lesson, every setback, a download. They evolved not by being seen, but by being invisible long enough to see everyone else clearly. The truth is, Sigmas thrive in the background because that's where clarity lives. No noise, no flattery, no fake support, just real observations, real thinking, and real self-mastery. They don't need to be known to be dangerous. They don't need validation to feel certain. Their power doesn't beg, it builds. Quietly, relentlessly. And when they strike, they don't do it to prove anything. They do it because the moment called for it. That's why it lands like a truth. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. You don't see them coming, you only feel the shift after they've moved. They are living proof that you don't need to be seen to be strong. And that sometimes the most potent kind of power is the one that doesn't need an audience to exist. Number 4, their core trait, weaponized self-reliance. Most people think self-reliance means doing things on your own, paying bills, solving problems, maybe avoiding help. But for Sigma males, it goes way deeper than that. This isn't some Instagram-level, I got me type of independence. It's emotional self-surgery. When life let them down, and it did repeatedly, they didn't whine, blame, or wait for rescue. They took the pain, cut it open mentally, studied it, stitched it back shut, and kept moving. No applause, no pep talk, no therapist on speed dial, just raw internal work done in complete silence. Over time, that survival mode becomes muscle memory, and that's where the detachment comes from, not coldness, not arrogance, but exhaustion from learning too early that depending on others comes with receipts. So they stop depending, not because they hate people, but because they've already learned what it costs when people don't show up. And instead of playing the victim, they harden their system, quietly, permanently. This self-reliance is not romantic. It's not cute. It's built from being forced to hold yourself together when you were barely standing. It's the result of swallowing your fear, suppressing your breakdowns, and choosing control over collapse. Because collapse wasn't an option. So when people tell Sigma males to open up or let someone in, they don't get that this man was his own surgeon, therapist, and support system before he even knew what those words meant. That kind of wiring creates a dangerous kind of man, not because he's aggressive, but because he needs absolutely nothing from anyone to function. You can't bribe him with love, loyalty, or belonging. He's already tasted the absence of all three, and he survived it. That's not independence, that's weaponized solitude. You won't see him coming, you won't see him break. And if you think you've got him figured out, you're already wrong, because he doesn't live for attention. He lives for internal peace, the kind he earned the hard way, by rebuilding himself in the dark with no blueprint but pain. Number 5, they're made by rejection, but not in a sad way. Rejection doesn't break Sigma males, it builds them. But not in the predictable, cliché underdog way where someone gets picked last and then trains for a montage moment. No, Sigma males weren't just left out, they were intentionally excluded, misread, or ignored because they didn't fit the mold. They weren't loud enough, fake enough, or submissive enough to play by the unspoken rules of social hierarchies. So instead of trying harder to belong, they quietly started disconnecting from the idea that those tables ever mattered. They saw the cool table for what it was, shallow. They saw the power table as manipulative, and the approval circle, a merry-go-round of insecurity and disguise. So while others were busy networking and people-pleasing, the Sigma male was mentally lighting the whole structure on fire. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. He realized that the game was rigged and the prize was meaningless, so he exited silently with no announcement and no grudge. But what happened next is what makes him different. He didn't sulk or spiral, he built. He created a space in his mind, his life, and his energy where only authenticity could enter. A place where no one else's validation held power. And the result? A man whose worth isn't based on being accepted. It's based on never needing acceptance in the first place. That's why people find Sigma males intimidating without knowing why. It's not arrogance. It's the fact that he's untouchable by approval-based systems. You can't dangle access, praise, or attention in front of him and expect him to jump. He's already rejected the whole idea that someone else gets to define his value. So yes, he was made by rejection, but not broken by it. He used it like fuel, not to fight for a spot, but to build a seatless table where he sits alone, unbothered and uninterested in your invite. Number 6. No childhood fairy tale, just hyper-awareness from a young age. Sigma males didn't grow up in some magical story where everyone held hands and self-esteem bloomed like flowers. Their childhoods weren't tragic in an obvious way. They were strange in a quiet, isolating way. While other kids got lost in games, cartoons, and the chase for attention, the Sigma male was noticing things, watching adults lie with smiles, watching kids copy each other just to fit in. He wasn't trying to be deep, he just couldn't unsee how fake everything felt. It's not that he was smarter than the others, he just wasn't sedated by the usual distractions. He felt disconnected from the emotional theater that everyone else seemed comfortable playing. While his peers were absorbing approval like oxygen, he was watching the whole structure with quiet confusion, wondering, why does everyone care so much about being liked by people they barely even like? And that question, or questions like it, stuck with him early, shaping a brain that refused to settle for surface-level answers. He became hyper-aware of facial expressions that didn't match words, of emotional tension no one acknowledged, of unspoken rules being obeyed without question. That kind of awareness isn't fun when you're young. It makes you feel like an alien stuck in a school play you never auditioned for. He probably came off as too serious, too observant, maybe even weird, but really he was just tapped into something deeper while everyone else was still following the script. This early detachment becomes the foundation of the Sigma mindset. Because once you see the machinery behind the social game, you can't play it the same way. You either pretend like you don't see it, or you step out of it completely. Sigma males chose the latter, quietly, and long before they ever had the words for it. That's why even as adults, Sigma males move differently. They've been on the outside looking in for so long it became second nature. They didn't choose to be different. They were just never hypnotized by the things everyone else took seriously. And in a world addicted to masks, that early clarity becomes both their burden and their greatest edge. Number 7, they didn't level up. They withdrew like it was war. Sigma males didn't level up in the way hustle culture likes to glamorize. There was no glowing transformation arc with gym selfies, LinkedIn quotes, or look at me now speeches. What happened was far more surgical. They withdrew, and not out of weakness, but as a form of psychological war. While everyone else was busy chasing clout, likes, power, or validation, the Sigma male was quietly stepping back, scanning the whole circus and realizing none of it was worth bleeding for. He didn't want to beat the game. He wanted out of the game, because to him the rules were fake, the rewards were rigged, and the players were too busy performing to notice how empty it all was. So instead of trying to dominate the system, he chose to detach from it completely. Not loudly, not dramatically, just strategically. He started declining invitations that didn't feel real. He stopped laughing at things that weren't funny. He cut off roles he never agreed to play, boyfriend, friend, employee, son, if they required self-betrayal as the entrance fee. To most people, this looked like coldness or arrogance. But in reality, it was clarity. He wasn't trying to be above anyone. He was just done pretending the race was real when the trophy was made of plastic. This kind of withdrawal isn't passive. It's a conscious, tactical decision to protect his inner energy like it's wartime supply. No more leaking attention, no more emotional overdrafts, no more self-sacrifice for things that never offered anything real in return. And the funny part? The more he withdrew, the more powerful he became. Not because people finally noticed him, but because he finally stopped needing them to. He didn't evolve to impress. He evolved because he refused to keep losing pieces of himself for a world that rewards the loudest pretenders. So no, Sigma males didn't rise above anyone. They just opted out of the collective delusion and built their own inner world with rules they could actually respect. That's not leveling up, that's liberation by silence, and most people will never have the nerve to do it. Number 8, they aren't born or made, they escape. Sigma males don't fit into the born this way or built through struggle narrative. Their existence isn't a neat origin story, it's more like an escape. They weren't sculpted by society, and they weren't gifted some elite DNA that made them mysterious and untouchable. They simply refused the roles they were offered. While everyone else was memorizing scripts on how to behave, succeed, love, or lead, the Sigma male was slowly and silently backing out of the theater entirely. He didn't rebel loudly. He didn't flip tables or scream for freedom. He just stopped subscribing to the expectations, to the rules, to the identities pushed on him like pre-packaged meals. Be an alpha, be a nice guy, be a team player, be emotionally available, but not too much. And instead of adapting, he just walked away from the menu entirely. The world kept trying to hand him a label, and he kept quietly dropping it on the floor. This isn't some edgy branding strategy, it's survival. Because deep down, Sigma males know that once you accept the label, you accept the limitations. You become something people can predict, control, and define. That's what they run from, not people, but being pinned down. Being readable, being expected to fit a mold. That rejection of identity isn't defiance, it's clarity. And here's the paradox. Even the term Sigma male would make a real Sigma male raise an eyebrow. He doesn't want to belong to another category, even one that celebrates him, because he knows the moment you start identifying too strongly with a label, you start living for it, instead of living for yourself. So when people ask, are Sigma males born or made? The answer is neither. They escaped. They refused to become what everyone else was becoming. They slipped through the cracks of identity, expectation, and social grooming, and started living on their own terms in a space where no one else gets to define what that even means. That's not rebellion. That's liberation without permission. And most people never even see the exit. Number 9, they don't want power over people. They want power over themselves. Sigma males aren't interested in climbing to the top of the social food chain just to bark orders or collect followers. That kind of power, the kind that relies on controlling others, feels hollow to them. It's performative, it's loud, and it usually comes with strings attached. Sigma males would rather master the one thing most people ignore, themselves. Their emotional reactions, their triggers, their impulses, their inner peace. That's the real battlefield for them. While others compete for attention, Sigmas compete for internal dominance. They want to own their thoughts, not other people's opinions. This obsession with self-control makes them strange to people who think power only exists externally. To someone who constantly chases clout, admiration, or leadership titles, a man who doesn't care about leading anyone can seem passive or disconnected, but the Sigma isn't passive. He's precise. He doesn't need to win arguments, manage people, or prove superiority. He's focused on whether he can go a whole day without being emotionally hijacked. That's the kind of discipline that doesn't get applause, but it's brutally effective. It also makes them dangerous in a quiet way. Because they're not driven by status or people-pleasing, they're almost impossible to manipulate. You can't guilt-trip them, flatter them, or bait them into drama. They've trained themselves to respond, not react, and that makes them unreadable to people used to power games. Most people gain influence by pushing buttons. Sigma males work hard to remove those buttons entirely. This inward power isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with a corner office or a viral quote, but it gives them something far more valuable, peace that no one else can touch. They don't rely on others to feel whole. They don't need to win to feel worthy, and they don't need to be seen to feel strong. That kind of self-governance is rare, and it's why Sigma males can walk away from anything, anyone, in any situation with zero hesitation. Because when you control yourself, you don't need the world to cooperate for you to feel in control. Number 10. They developed emotional autonomy like a prison escape plan. Emotional autonomy wasn't some feel-good self-help milestone for Sigma males. It was survival strategy. For them, emotions weren't just feelings. They were used against them. Guilt, obligation, silent expectations, emotional traps dressed up as love or loyalty. Early on, Sigma males realized that people don't always want connection, they want control. And the fastest way to control someone is by hijacking their emotions. So they did what most people don't have the nerve to do. They disconnected, rewired, and rebuilt their emotional system like they were breaking out of a psychological prison. They stopped giving easy access to their feelings, not out of fear, but out of strategy. They knew that the more people could predict their emotions, the more those emotions could be used to steer them, through guilt, shame, or flattery. So they started doing the opposite of what was expected. Instead of reacting to pressure, they paused. Instead of oversharing, they observed. And instead of forming instant emotional bonds, they rationed out their emotional energy like currency in a hostile economy. This made them unpredictable, not because they're chaotic, but because they no longer operate on the emotional cues others rely on. Most people expect certain emotional responses as part of social interaction. Approval, empathy, outrage, affection. Sigma males learn to filter those responses through logic first. Is this manipulation? Is this genuine? What does this cost me emotionally? And if the math doesn't add up, they opt out completely. No drama, no announcement. That's why dealing with a Sigma male can feel disorienting to emotionally dependent people. They can't be guilt-tripped, love-bombed, or emotionally blackmailed. Not because they're cold, but because they've done the internal work to own their emotional reactions and refuse to outsource them to others. To them, emotional autonomy isn't about being numb, it's about choosing when and where to feel, not being dragged through other people's emotional roller coasters. It's the difference between holding your own leash and letting the world yank it every time they need a reaction. That control, that total emotional self-governance, is what makes the Sigma male a wild card in every room he enters. You can't predict him, you can't guilt him, and most of all, you can't own him. Number 11. Most Sigma males were once silent weapons in loud rooms. You wouldn't have spotted a Sigma male in his early years by how loud or charismatic he was. Because he wasn't. He wasn't the center of attention, and he definitely wasn't the class clown or the loud friend at the party. He was the quiet one, but not in a nervous, awkward way. More like someone who was mentally 10 steps ahead, silently clocking everything. He watched people not to copy them, but to decode them, their patterns, their games, their weaknesses. While everyone else was putting on a show for attention, he was in the background gathering data like a human lie detector with perfect recall. He didn't need the spotlight. He had something more powerful: clarity. From a young age, he understood how fake most social dynamics were. He could see how people laughed too hard to be liked, changed opinions just to blend in, and crumbled under the need for validation. And while others got high off approval, he started building his resistance to it. That's what made him dangerous early on. Not physically, not socially, but psychologically. He was a silent weapon, sharpening himself while everyone else was performing. And here's what people often get wrong. Sigma males weren't shy. They were just too busy watching the simulation glitch. They saw how people lied for acceptance, twisted themselves for approval, and pretended confidence they didn't have. It was like everyone was acting, and no one knew it. So instead of joining the performance, they started planning how to never need the stage at all. The goal wasn't to rise within the system, it was to eventually detach from it completely. So while their peers were building identities based on feedback loops, likes, praise, popularity, the Sigma male was building internal code, values that couldn't be bribed, boundaries that couldn't be negotiated, a mindset that would one day make him immune to the very circus he quietly studied all along. You never saw him coming because you never thought to look. But when he steps out of the shadows later in life, calm, calculated, and unmoved, you realize that the most dangerous man in the room was the one who never needed to be noticed. Number 12, they grew tired of being good when they realized it was just obedience. There comes a point in a Sigma male's life when he looks back at all the times he was told to be good, play nice, and stay humble, and he realizes it was never about character, it was about compliance. From classrooms to boardrooms, being a good guy really just meant don't question authority, don't speak too strongly, and definitely don't disrupt the flow. For a while he played along, not because he believed in it, but because it was easier than dealing with the fallout of saying what he really thought. But eventually something in him snapped, not in rage, not in bitterness, in clarity. He saw that nice was just a leash disguised as virtue, that humble was often a demand to shrink, that polite was used to silence truth when it made people uncomfortable. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. That's when he stopped being good in the way the world wanted and started being real. And the shift, it wasn't loud or angry, it was clean, like a man finally stepping out of a skin that never fit. From that moment, he stopped softening his voice to protect egos. He stopped pretending to care about things that bored him to death. He stopped agreeing just to avoid conflict. And no, he didn't turn rude or hostile. He just became uncensored. And to systems that depend on polite obedience to survive, that makes him dangerous. He started choosing honesty over harmony, solitude over fake friendships, truth over tact. Not to be edgy, but because he finally understood that playing good was costing him too much. Time, energy, freedom, all spent upholding a personality built to keep others comfortable. He didn't want to be likable anymore. He wanted to be liberated. And in a world that rewards conformity with fake peace, a man who refuses to play nice on command becomes unpredictable. Not because he's unstable, but because he can't be guilt-tripped into submission. He stopped being manageable. That's when everything changes, not just for him, but for every space he walks into from then on. So, are Sigma males born or made? The truth is, neither label fits, because Sigma males don't become like everyone else does. They extract themselves from the noise. They escape the emotional conditioning, the performance scripts, the applause addiction, and the need to be understood. They don't chase status, approval, or belonging. They build internal worlds so complete they don't need permission to exist. Every trait that defines them, from their emotional autonomy to their ghost-like presence, is the result of deliberate rejection. Rejection of control, rejection of identity labels, rejection of the fake glue that holds most social hierarchies together. They didn't rise by climbing ladders. They rose by burning the ladders down and walking a different path entirely. One no one sees until it's already been paved. No mentor, no manual, no blueprint. Just brutal clarity, quiet rebellion, and a level of inner discipline that doesn't flex for attention. And that's what makes Sigma males so rare, not because they're better, but because they're unreachable by everything that usually defines modern masculinity. You can't clone them. You can't teach their mindset in a workshop. You can't fake what they are, because what they've built wasn't made for display. It was made for freedom. So if you're looking to understand the Sigma male, don't ask how he got here. Ask what he walked away from to become this way. That's where the real answer lives. If this hit different, it's because it was meant to. Now hit that like button, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who thinks they know what a Sigma male really is. They don't. But now, you do. If you found value in this, and it gave you a fresh lens on the Sigma mindset, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss content that actually cuts through the noise. Like the video to show support, drop a comment and let's hear your perspective or your silent Sigma observations. And if you know someone who's been quietly living outside the system, share this with them. This isn't surface level talk. This is for the few who get it. Let's keep building something real.